Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood. A season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. Be sure to join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. I'm Stephen Glosser, and today I'm joined by the one and only Dave Leedahl. How are you doing, Dave?
Man, I'm so happy to be here, Stephen. I love being here. I love you. So it's a great combination.
I'm pumped. This is our first official episode. This is our first guest. You're one of my best friends. I would have it no other way.
Let's get it. Let's get after it.
I know, our story goes back a ways. 12 years ago, I came to NDSU as a little freshman. I had no idea what the next 12 years of my life would ever pan out to be.
Yeah,
I was not very hopeful in some regards. But you took me to Oreo Shakes at Applebee's, and I feel like the rest is history. You discipled me. We became best friends. We work together now. It's pretty fun. But
it's amazing. Well, first of all, Stephen, thanks for having me on. For all of the millions of people listening to this today.
Millions.
We got to believe for that. Yeah, when we're recording this, it may not be millions, but it will be someday. No, in all sincerity, I just appreciate your heart for young adults. I appreciate who you've been in my life. I appreciate our friendship. We've shared not just Oreo Shakes, as you know. We've shared a few laughs along the way, a few embarrassing moments, some late night talks about relationships.
Some epic road trips.
Epic road trips where we were in danger and needed a little bit of God's protection, if you will.
Absolutely.
But here we are. No, I'm doing great, Stephen. I'm just so thankful to be here and thankful that you would even let me partake in really the Stephen Glosser podcast experience.
I don't know if we should call it that, but that was the alternative name. Didn't go with that one. But Dave, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Just who's Dave today?
Yeah, Dave today. I'm the chief people officer of the Leedahl home. So I wash dishes. I clean up after children. I love my wife Alissa. But yeah, I'm a JAG, just a guy. And
okay.
Yeah, it's
a new one for me.
It's really my highest credential, I think, right now, and that is being married to Alissa now for 10 years is my greatest joy. 3 at the time of this recording, 3 kids. Hopefully, we keep them all in the future. Jay, he's 6.
I'm going to be listening to this in 5 years, and I'm going to fact check that.
Whatever happened to those kids? Harper 4 and Jones 2. And then, hey, I made a big leap 3 months ago out of full-time pharmacy into full-time ministry. And so I'm the lead pastor of the church that I grew up in. It's a wild thing.
That's the normal ladder, right?
I think it's
you
a normal
become
thing.
the director of pharmacy at a large hospital, and then you become a lead pastor.
It's not normal until you make it normal, right?
I like that.
Guess.
That's actually part of what I want to talk about today. I think your story is incredible. Also, when this idea of this podcast, a podcast for young adults, navigating this kind of beautiful and complicated season. It's every big decision, not every big decision, but a lot of big decisions, who you marry,
totally,
jobs, buying houses, a lot of disappointment, a lot of discouragement, a lot of joy. I just think it's such a crazy season, and I want to help people navigate it like I've been helped. Mm-hmm. And I know when we started talking about it, you were like, full force.
Need it. Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Send it.
And, the church that we're a part of, the church you lead, Northview Church, this is actually a resource of Northview Church, which I'm super thankful for. But I know that this is a huge part of your heart, is young adults and helping young adults not only navigate the season, but grow in their relationships. And so I know for you as a church pastor, we're going to get into that a little bit. Like,
right.
How does this work? But I want you to kind of go back earlier in your story. Obviously, we're going to land in these young adult years, but kind of leading up to that, what were kind of the significant things that kind of shaped you as a man?
Yeah, and even before really dive into that. You know, Stephen, I love your heart for really helping our church position ourselves to have those tough discussions about young adulthood, because it's not easy. And a lot of those young adult struggles and questions, I think, go all the way back to when we were little kids. I mean, for me, a lot of people know my story. I think being a pastor in a church, you share your story so often, you kind of assume everybody knows it, which is not true. But for me, growing up in a single parent home, mom was 45 when she found herself raising two twin boys of 6 years of age, all on her own, knowing that just 6 years before that, it was a miracle that she had kids to begin with when she was 39, conceiving twins. Like, what a wild thing. And from all of that, really reliance on the Lord as, I would say, not a new believer, but someone who is definitely growing in their faith, to go from really the peak of having a miracle in your life to now being a single mom because my dad left our family. I mean, that really created a hole in my life. And it was a hole that my mom did everything she could do in her power to position us to hear the voice of God, to be part of church, but yet I still had that bitterness in my heart. And it took a lot of things for me to really come to the idea that if God can forgive me through sending Jesus, then I can forgive this person, this father that I never knew.
What do you feel like coming into college, your college years, what impact did that make? Yeah, I mean, growing up in a fatherless home, like, that is not easy. And I think sometimes you don't even realize the void there is, and
for sure
at that time, like, coming into those years, what did you kind of view yourself as in your future, and like looking 10 years down the road, what did you see as a father and like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question, because college is really the first experience most people have being a young adult. I think a lot of people who go to college, they assume that young adulthood doesn't occur till after college. Whereas the moment you get that diploma or whatever from your high school, you really enter that first young adulthood period of time. And for me, God was working things out. I was part of a great youth group, had a great youth pastor who preached on bitterness and forgiveness. And I had an eye-opening experience as a senior in high school that really started that conversation in my life. But it wasn't until I got to college and I met our current college pastor, who still is a college pastor at the church today, which is kind of awkward when your father figure kind of becomes somebody who is on your team, and
you're his
Brad.
boss.
Yeah. When Pastor Brad's like,
boss.
"You're my boss," it's like, that sounds awkward to me, but okay, we'll run with it. He really met with my twin brother and I, and we knew him because we were in the same church, and you kind of see people interact with him. And as a high school student, even younger, you kind of knew he was a great guy, but never really talked to him. But he had us into his office, and I just figured he'd be like most people talking to young adults. "Listen here, youngster, God has some promises for your life," or "Here's a great book."
It's a terrible Brad impersonation.
that's a terrible Brad.
Exactly. No, you're right though, because that's not what he was.
But
like.
it's just, you think, here's a Bible verse, here's a book, here's a resource, here's something you should pray over your life. He didn't do any of those things. He just said, "Can I be a dad to you?" And something that I thought that I had conquered in my life, figured out, moved on from, all of a sudden I find myself weeping in Pastor Brad's office, just identifying with, wow, that is a hole in my heart that I've been yearning would be filled by somebody, but nobody had really was straightforward about it like Brad was. And I had great men of God in my life who took us fishing, took us hunting, taught us how to do, guy stuff, whatever that even means. And they meant so well, but it was really Brad who really said, "I just want to be a dad to you." And he delivered on that. And I think as a young adult, we look for people who are really willing to live out what they say, because we're looking for authenticity. And so many people want to provide just enough to kind of get you over the next hump and then look for their next opportunity to be an influence. But Brad was willing to stick those things out with us, which just was mind-blowing to this day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, relevant to everybody's story too, that there's like a person along the way that makes that significant impact. And I think for young men, I think regardless of if you grow up in a household with a really strong family dynamic and parent, like there's still father hurts. There's still wounds that come from generations of family, like no matter what family. So then you find these people along the way that God uses to bring healing in your life or bring clarity, or for a lot, we don't experience that. And I think sometimes there's people that I encounter on a daily basis that are still longing for something. Like, what would you say to that person that maybe doesn't have your story, but a story similar to yours of, I have this hurt, this wound that I'm coming into these kind of pivotal years. A lot of people say the researchers, the scientists, or whoever does the research, they say like this is the most pivotal period of your life, your early 20s, your mid 30s. So what would you say to that person? Like, I'm still longing for that. I'm still looking for that.
Yeah. I think what I appreciate about you, Stephen, is you always can find the trend and the connection between the hurt that someone had experiences victory, but knowing that if that's what's happening in this person's life that I know, there's a good chance that hurt exists somewhere else. And you've always had this ability to really say, God, how can I be part of somebody's story to meet the need and that hole that somebody has? They're yearning for something. And I think about my eye-opening experience at a guys' night for our college ministry, where we had 70 guys in a room. Everyone's supposed to go around and share their fathering experience. And I thought for sure, my story is the worst, and what God brought me out of was so crazy. And then you hear, I remember 68 of the 72 men in that circle had father hurts of some kind. Only 2 said that they had, really that father that simply loved them, prayed with them, told them about Jesus. So what I would tell people is, number one, it's not going to be solved overnight. But also, number 2, God wants to change your story. God wants to change your family tree. You might be the only hope you have to be the father that your dad wasn't, to be the husband maybe your dad wasn't, and to say, God, because Psalm 68:5 says, a father to the fatherless, a defender of the widow is God in his holy dwelling. I set the lonely in families, the prisoner forth was singing. It's saying, God, make that more than a Bible verse to me. Make that more than just a nice thing I read in scripture, and help me understand that you want to be that to me, and that God's going to put those people in our lives as we surround ourselves with Christ-centered community to be a father figure. I think one thing that you bring out so well out of the young adult just heart that you have, Stephen, is we might not be far in age from each other, but like you fathered me, I fathered you. You father people that you might actually be younger than because they have that father hurt. So I think this idea that I can be a father to somebody, or that somebody can father me, is part of Christian community. It's not necessarily looking for like an old sage on the stage. Yeah, somebody who's old, like, oh, I can be a father too. It's really just those men of God that you rub shoulders with every day.
When I think to that, it brings up just a great point too, of just the person that maybe is experiencing, I think right now, what I see a lot is kind of retreating. And I think it's easy to even lump in the church. I think there's a lot of hurt that's geared towards the church and ultimately God. And I don't blame anybody's story. Like, I don't look at those people and go, you're wrong. You know, but I think the interesting thing is that I'm also seeing a lot of people that are just craving like an authentic experience of who God is and demonstrated through his people. And I think there's a gap that oftentimes exists between who God says we're called to be and how we live in society. And I think that's the thing that I really appreciate about your life. Because, I think when you were 18, 19, I don't think you saw the path that you're on now as the Dave Leedahl path to young adulthood. I think there's a lot of twists and turns there. Do you mind just kind of touching on that? Like, what was, when you were 18, 19, you were set off for pharmacy, like what drew you to pharmacy, first of all, and kind of what was the life goal? What was the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. What's really cool about my story is I have a great uncle named Uncle Blair. Of course, we all have to include the title Uncle before our name.
Uncle Blair, that's a really cool. Yeah. Mine are like Uncle Bob and Uncle Dan. I have 2 Uncle Dans.
I feel like most people have an Uncle Dave, but hey, I have an Uncle Blair. He's super cool. Always been a hero. Actually, when I would visit him on family vacations, he and his wife, my Aunt Jackie, who are amazing people, they would take us to their home church. Well, of course, I was like, this is an amazing church. I wonder who this pastor is who preaches so well. Well, it was Francis Chan, the original church that he pastored in Simi Valley, California. And so we'd go and be like, man, our aunt and uncle love the Lord. They have a great church.
That's wild.
And my uncle was a director of pharmacy for a large hospital in Southern California. And so we admired his walk with the Lord. And of course, my Aunt Jackie, we admired his just fervency for leadership and his heart behind leading people and his heart behind healthcare and how he integrated faith and healthcare in his family. Such a tight-knit kind of thing in his life that I really saw that as kind of the epitome. I wanted to be like Uncle Blair. And so we, of course, had a great pharmacy school in town. God gave me a mind to be able to learn drug names and that kind of thing. So I put all that together. head into college, and then found out that the biggest twist and turn in my college life was actually when about the third or fourth year of college, I went on a college ministry conference with Pastor Brad and had a distinct call of God that was undeniable in my life. And I went to Pastor Brad and I said, I'm ready to quit school. I'm going to go into the ministry full time and start Bible school. He said, don't do that. Do not do that. And I was like, oh, why not? You're a pastor. You're supposed to tell me. You're supposed to tell me. Surely full-time ministry is the only way to go if you feel called. It's like, no, Dave. Finish your degree, become a pharmacist, and you can always do Bible school correspondence. So I started a program called Berean. You did Berean, and went through the college ministry kind of pathway alongside pharmacy school. And then I was almost done, but I'd kind of lost motivation. And then I had these two friends in pharmacy school named Lonnie and Lisa, and they love the Lord to this day. But when they were in pharmacy school, they really admittedly didn't have a relationship with the Lord. So they were dating, they wanted to get married, and they're like, hey, don't you do that like ministry stuff? And I just got them to be friends with them. And they said, we really want you to do our wedding. And I said, that's great. I got this problem. I'm not a pastor yet, but I'm working on it. And they said, well, can you speed it up? Because we want to do our wedding. We want you to be our pastor. So you
crammed Bible school.
So I crammed Bible school, crammed it in. It took a couple classes during like a Christmas break and a summer break. And I did their wedding. The first kind of ministry experience that I ever had of formal ministry was doing the wedding for Lonnie and Lisa at the Alumni Center of North Dakota State. And that really opened my eyes to, wow, I don't know if I'll be a pharmacist forever. That was pretty amazing to be a part of their lives as they found Jesus.
That's amazing. I feel like when you and Alissa, so I mean, I've known you guys for a while, but
yeah,
when you guys got your degrees, she's a nurse, you're a pharmacist, you spent 2 years at Rochester at Mayo Clinic, which is like the hospital.
It was pretty amazing.
Like we're from the Midwest, so Mayo Clinic is like the hospital in our neck of the woods anyways. But I would go to visit you, and you were staying up late writing some research paper about a body part that I didn't even know existed. And no, it wasn't a body. It was renal. Yes,
the kidneys.
We don't need to dive into that.
This is not a healthcare podcast.
A healthcare podcast.
Are we talking about healthcare? No.
But you know, like you're so dedicated to that, but also we drove however many minutes or an hour to Winona State, where you were ministering to college students at Winona State University during that season. Like, I think sometimes people can look at your story and you and Alissa and go, wow, you guys just left pharmacy and left nursing to become lead pastor and children's pastor at a church. But you've always lived on mission. Like, the way that I see you guys is that right now, I think a lot of people, and I saw a recent article, it was like, from delivering prescriptions to sermons, you know, like epic story
title maybe, but
true. You know, like, I think a lot of people go like, wow, they like left normal behind, but I think you guys left normal behind when you got serious for Jesus. And I think that it's been this long path that now it comes to like this public fruition. But like, can you talk about those years of maybe being in pharmacy, being in nursing, being in your neighborhood, being in your workplace, yet not being in full-time ministry? Like, how did you guys stay on mission, and what did you do to stay on mission?
Yeah, I think even before I get too deep into that, what I appreciate about really your heart, Stephen, is you've been doing the whole idea of leaving normal behind your whole life. And I know, as you know, I've watched your life, and you and your wife, Taylor, just really embrace, you know, we want a personal ministry. Well, we exist for more than ourselves. We want to have a mission that we can rally behind. I think you exude that out of your life. I think for Alissa and I, it really came down to what do we exist for? And is there something that can bring us together that's more than a sports team, or more than the fact that we have a contract for marriage, more than we might have kids together someday? Like, what do we really rally behind together? Like, what's something that can make an impact for someone's forever rather than just someone's tomorrow? I think when we're young adults, we think about what we do today impacts tomorrow. I would argue that when you live on mission with something related to the work of Jesus Christ, you're not just impacting tomorrow, you're impacting people's eternities, like their forevers. And so even though we knew God had given us an opportunity. I would call it a platform, but I think that sometimes can get twisted, that whole idea of having a platform. I don't even think we had a platform. We just had jobs, and we were in an area of healthcare where we were on a floor or a department where people, they just needed hope. They just needed Jesus, just like any other department, whether you work in a grocery store or you work in a business or you help at a bank or something. We all have that role, right? So how it played out was, Alissa knew she had a call to ministry, but she had never fully been encouraged in that. And so I could encourage her, and I think we all have this as young adults. If you get married, you encourage your wife or your husband, or if you are single and you have friends, you encourage each other. Man, God wants to do something through your life. And then she had a mentor really just speak into her life that, like, Alissa, you need to stop thinking less of yourself, and you need to know that you are anointed and gifted in an area of personal ministry. You need to embrace that. So then she started Berean after becoming a nurse, where I had already become a credentialed minister. And over that first year of being in Rochester, Minnesota, at Mayo, she became a credentialed minister, and I got to be part of her credentialing ceremony in the greater Minneapolis area. And from there, I got to see her really step into something that she had all along. But it took really us saying, God, we want to be like those grandparents or those parents that leave a legacy of true faith and ministry, not just a legacy of a 401k or a big house or other career success.
Right. I feel like when, we moved, we were in college ministry for 6 years. We moved to New Jersey, and a lot of like the lead up to us moving was kind of like a part of me was being ripped away, because ministry had always been kind of like a silver platter of, there's always college students to meet with. We were part of a very large college ministry where there was always leaders to be discipling. And then I just had this like epiphany. I was praying, and it was just like, from now on, my congregation is going to be the people that I meet at the grocery store. It's going to be my next door neighbors. It's going to be the people that I come across in my everyday life. And I think sometimes it could be like, oh man, like that's crazy and hard, but that kind of woke me up. Like that was like a wake up moment. It made me really excited, and it's what fuels me more so today than ever before. And so I think there's that temptation in this season of life. We get those paychecks, and we get the stability and the comfort, and it's so easy to kind of retreat into what I'm going to call normal.
No doubt.
I'm going to go to work. I'm going to pay the bills. I'm going to take care of the kids. All these things are important, and vital, but then it's, what else can I give, is kind of taken out of the equation. And that's my heart for myself, for everybody that I meet, and everybody that listens to this podcast, is that there would be a desire that says, not how can I serve at church, or how can I, it's like, no, how can I love the way that God's called me to love, and be the person that God's called me to be in the midst of everybody. And so what would be your, this isn't like an advice thing, and this isn't an advice podcast, but what would you tell that person that's maybe like, I'm deep into it. I'm 5 years into my job. I'm very comfortable going home, watching Netflix. I'm very comfortable,
no doubt,
just kind of doing my thing. And I have great conversations with work. I go to church on Sunday, but to really step back into that mission, or for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I think what I love about that question is it really asks the question, what kind of community am I a part of, and how is that community affecting how I live? I would say that for a person who, and I think we're all drawn into that. I thought you put it beautifully. We all want to do that. I think the false thing about listening to a podcast like this or watching this is you think, well, certainly Stephen and Dave, like they were born wanting to leave normal behind and do ministry and pastor people and shepherd people. I would propose to you that's actually not what we wake up and always want to do. I mean, sure, deep down in the depths of our heart, we know it's the right thing.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, I'm tired. My family's tired. I just want to like spend a few years kind of hunkering down and going back into normal. I think the problem is when you play that out to the end, like where are you going to be? And I think being part of a church like Northview, like our dream, our hope is that we're willing to have this conversation of how do we leave normal behind, but in a life-giving way, in a way where I don't have to burn out. I don't have to be frustrated. I don't have to grind so hard at these duties that my relationship with Jesus becomes a chore. That I can just, out of the love for Jesus that I have, practically say, Lord, what can I do in the community of believers that I'm in just to add value to people's lives? And so I think the question that you asked was good, because it's like, what do I actually do? I would propose that Alissa and I have always had the approach of, no matter how much life throws at us, making adjustments is always better than fully disengaging. I think we live in a culture where it's like, I engage and then I disengage. I engage and then I disengage. What if we just made adjustments when different things in life happened, where I don't ever fully disengage from leaving normal behind. I don't ever leave normal behind and never look back. I just have this kind of peaceful time in my life where, okay, we've got little kids now. It's just going to look different. I think about rallying, around that mission. And I think you and Taylor have seen this too. You rally around a mission. That mission doesn't have to look the exact same way forever. Today, it might be something where, man, you're going every day, you're going hard. It's maybe even part of your career. And then you have seasons of your life where, hey, I'm in it. It's more of a monthly thing. It's a weekly thing. It's an expression of my community. But I at least leave enough normal behind to make sure that I'm in God's will.
Right. No, that's so good. I think too, for us, it was kind of getting into that season where we were away that God started to put different dreams and different, including this podcast. It was like I was in kind of this void where I was then going, all right, God, who am I? And what is it that you want my life to be? And that was just when I feel like he started to remind me these things that I've always been passionate about, and show me just in conversations with my neighbors and the people that I was coming in contact with, like there's great need around us. And I think obviously the church, the building does a lot to reach that, but I think what really needs to happen is the church, the people need to be where they are and exist where they exist, but differently, and
that's a difficult conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get that twisted and to let a past hurt in that, drive our reality for the future. And I think you've had hurt from church stuff. So have I. As a pastor, I've had church hurt. I wish things had been different. If I could go back and tell some people, hey, that's not the way to have life-giving ministry, I think both of us would probably do that. But I think you kind of say, I think what you're saying, putting it all together is, don't throw away a good thing God wants to do because of a past experience. There's something new, and it's going to take us, not our parents, not our grandparents. We get to decide what we want church to look like for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, I think when you talk leaving normal behind, I think that's just the whole conversation too, is that the way it was doesn't need to be the way it is and will be. Good. And I think that's been the thing that this is kind of born out of too, is where are the real conversations? Like, where are the conversations, about weakness, about overcoming things that in the midst of it were embarrassing. And I think it's been fun to be a part of some of those conversations. And I just spoke at a retreat and just aired my dirty laundry. And it was the most powerful speaking engagement I've ever had, because what happened was that our hearts were just laid bare, and everybody came in with, all right, I can be me and I can lay it down. And I love having those conversations. I know we have friends that are walking through infertility and miscarriage, and a dear friend of ours just lost a parent. And there's so much that can drive us to a bad place, but as a community, we can rally around each other. And I love that that's what your heart is to create in Fargo with Northview. Do you just mind, obviously leaving pharmacy behind? I think a lot of people see like dollar figures when they have that conversation, like, whoa, you were the director of pharmacy, now you're a pastor. Yeah. But that obviously isn't the main thing. But what were some of the factors that went into that? And was that hard? Like, just, we're talking about honest conversations. Like, was that difficult?
Yeah, I think, everything contributed in that conversation, because obviously when you are like me, you really want to know you can take care of your family. And once I found out that, that we would be able to function financially, but also that some of those, I hate to use the word earthly, but some of those earthly dreams, we would have to be able to sacrifice that. It really just caused us to challenge ourselves. What are we really aiming for? And I think we really discussed a lot about how do we want to have these materialistic dreams, or do we want to be in the will of God? And it really came down to that. Our church is a beautiful expression of, I think, what life with Jesus can be in this community. And the thought of not saying yes to Jesus for that was like crippling. And Alissa and I would have these real conversations. We feel like we are more valuable to our church as a pharmacist and a nurse than as pastors. Like, we had that honest conversation. Like, we don't think we're actually as valuable to this church if we become pastors here. We would rather serve somebody else. Certainly God has somebody else to lead the church, and we would just be their support. And then we could pour in even more financially, and we could pour in even more with our time and energy. And then God really challenged us. What if I'm not asking you to just support somebody else? What if I'm actually asking you to lead?
Yeah.
And it was as clear as I'm talking to you right now. That was the question that was laid on our heart. And I remember thinking to myself, the last thing that would confirm this is how Alissa feels. Because I think as a young adult, we always need to make sure that who we're doing life with, our spouse, if applicable, has a green light. So when Alissa talked to me and said, Dave, you not only should do this, you need to do this. And not only will I bless you and support you, I will also partner with you and I will encourage you. That is where we turn from this idea of we'll just tolerate it to let's do it. And if it all blows up, we at least won't ever have to wonder for the rest of our lives what would have happened if we would have said yes to God. And that's where it's hard to explain that to people, because you hear about the call of God your whole life, but then you actually are faced with that discussion,
right?
And you're the one that has to say yes or no to God. It's like not as easy. And do I regret it? Absolutely not. Am I excited for the future? Absolutely. Do I know it will be hard at times, where there'll be times where it was like, oh man, it would have been so much easier to stay put. I know those days. Well, we've already had a few of those days, but are those days coming as well? Absolutely. But I will tell you that the best day in pharmacy is still not as good as the worst day being a pastor, because we're in the will of God.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's so good. I think too, there's just such a, like you said, there's just a beauty in being where you're called to be. And I think I battled the expectation game a lot in my own journey. Like, I think there's a lot of people that thought I was crazy to leave college ministry. And then a lot of people that thought I was crazy to ever do college ministry over what I'm doing now with AO1 and like all these different things. And the sweet spot has been being able to sit down and just be alone with God and just know like I'm there. And I think I'm not there. Like I've made it to the top.
You're there,
but
Steven.
Like I'm just in this place where I'm just so confident that where God has me is where he desires me. And, you know, and even back, we talked about like, how do you bring that to like the everyday life? Like, not everybody's path is to leave ministry or to leave their job and go into ministry. Like that is the opposite. You know, like what we desire is that people would be in their everyday job, in their everyday life, in their everyday family, you know, and live authentically for Jesus in a way that impacts a lot of people in a deep way. And I think sometimes it's just the subtle shifts. I know for Taylor and I, one of the things that we've said is we eat dinner every night. So why not just like open our home to people on a regular basis? Like, it's not that hard to cook for 2 extra people or 3 extra people. So let's do that. Like, that's just a subtle shift that we can make in our everyday life that doesn't overwhelm us and stress us out. It actually fuels us. It gives us life. And so I think it's just those beautiful things. And that's a question for anybody listening, is like, what is that one thing that you can do? Like, we're not asking, hey, make the drastic change today, but what's the small adjustment that we can make to leave normal behind, to take that step out of what maybe is the expected path of success, happiness, joy, comfort in this American world and the world itself, and really step into what God has for them.
Yeah, I would say make it small, make it doable in your life. I just met with a precious lady in our church. She has been a member of our church for 45 years and has served on our welcome team for all 45 years faithfully. Wow. She's worked, a job like everybody else. She has a great marriage. She has wonderful kids. She has grandkids, but she always saw being part of a team that just says hi to people when they come to church as valuable. And she didn't know, what people were coming in, feeling, thinking, but she was able to be maybe the one smiling face and helpful person that maybe that person's experienced all week, maybe all month. And what I love about her is she never let, life get so out of hand that she couldn't just have this simple personal ministry through a healthy church expression. And I think what we face as young adults is we want it to be big. We want it to be flashy. We want it to be awesome. And I think sometimes that's appropriate. But what I would say to somebody who is kind of wrestling with this is, leaving normal behind can just mean leaving part of your normal life behind every single day or every single week. Like when I think about someone serving coffee at church, I mean, that is like 45 minutes to 2.5 hours, depending on how long your coffee house is open at your church. If you do that once a week or once a month, you're leaving normal behind for that moment. And you have no idea in the scheme of eternity if that coffee was able to connect somebody to somebody else, to start a conversation, to change a whole family tree, to change generations, because we left normal behind for a moment. And I think it's not saying, every time you leave normal behind, the world's going to change because of you. But it's saying, God, I'm just here. So I'm really into this couple in the Bible right now. Their names are Priscilla and Aquila.
Okay.
They're really cool names. And I love it because
almost named my children that.
Yeah, I love it because it says that they were tent makers.
I'm kidding. I didn't actually.
I wasn't gonna like bring it around to the accuracy.
Somebody's like, wow, that guy's
statements.
Really Christian.
So
he almost
Christian.
named his kid Aquila.
Bro, like a number 10. Like you're 100. You're 10. But what I love about Acts 18 is Paul refers to Priscilla and Aquila as these people who, well, actually Luke wrote Acts, but they hang out with Paul. They are tent makers. And all it says is that Paul was a tent maker, Priscilla and Aquila were tent makers, so they hung out together and did ministry together. And they would actually help Paul get out and do ministry, and they would keep tent making. But later it says that Priscilla and Aquila risked their lives for Paul. Now, we don't know what that was, but there was something about these two tent makers that really, really blessed Paul. And so much so that Paul said, greet Priscilla and Aquila later in Scripture, and also greet the church that meets in their house. So they obviously opened up their home to people for spiritual contest. And later in Scripture, it says that, I want to greet you, but who also wants to greet you are Priscilla and Aquila and the group that meets in their house. So it started off as just a couple tent makers helping out Paul, letting people come into their home. That very group becomes a group that actually, the people that Priscilla and Aquila refreshed and loved and just gave a rip about, that group ended up being a blessing and a greeting and a warmth to other people that maybe they never knew. So I think it's as simple as kind of what you mentioned earlier, and I love your heart behind this, Stephen, especially as young adults. Many of us have a place where we live. And if you open up the place where you live to other people with a desire just that God would open up doors somehow, some way, that's already leaving normal behind. Instead of a Netflix binge or a video game session or whatever, that would be perfectly fun, but not perfectly, set for eternity.
For sure. Oh, so good. I think about your transition and what did your coworkers, the people in pharmacy, people at the hospital, how did they respond to this transition?
So it was pretty similar.
I know how the church responded.
Yeah. So I would say, I'll give you a hint of like how I felt in a different situation to highlight how they felt. So a few days ago, actually, just a few days ago, but then also a few months ago. So Jones, our youngest, has this thing that he does where he poops in the bathtub. He waits till it's nice and warm and cozy. And then not only that, but he grabs it with his hand and he throws it out of the bathtub. Like literally I'm standing like talking to Jones and all of a sudden I hear a thump, and it's him throwing his piece of poop out of the bathtub onto the floor. And then a few days ago, it was a piece of poop. He picks it up, he puts it on the ledge right by the bathtub. So obviously you can imagine like what I'm thinking, like what just happened. So when I told the management team at the hospital that I work at, or the health system that I work at, that that's what I said. I said, you guys are getting an upgrade in leadership because I'm transitioning to a lead pastor role for a church that I grew up in, actually. You would have thought I had picked up a piece of poop and threw it at the wall because it was big eyes, big mouths, and then it was this whole like, congratulations, like they knew I was a
Yeah.
Christian. They knew I did ministry stuff on the side, but just going from that job to that job. And so literally it was like this dead silence. And I said, well, I guess we'll kind of wrap up management meeting for today. And it was just this silent walk kind of back up. But I will tell you that at least two of the people that were in that room that day, I've been able to have really amazing conversations about the Lord with. And I don't think those conversations would have happened without that change in careers. And then all the conversations that occurred after that, like I had a doctor like knock on my door, his name's not Dr. Smith. I'll call him Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith, how are you? He said, man, I heard we're losing you. I said, sorry. And he said, no, man, you were doing the real work. You're doing the real work. And I was like, well, Dr. Smith, I mean, thank you. But what do you mean? He said, I heard about what you're doing. You're going into full-time ministry. So this is the crazy thing, right? So even though I'm a doctor, I got really convicted that I have a call to ministry on my life.
Wow.
And I started doing Moody Bible Institute online because I thought, what else should I do? And I just thought there's no way someone in a healthcare profession, especially in an area of leadership, would ever change careers and go into ministry. But then you did it. And so I thought, oh, shucks. Now I got to really evaluate if I should do that in my own life. And what's really cool is he leads a kids ministry for another church in town. And we've been able to get coffee and talk. And you know what's so funny? He was in Dick Schroeder's Chi Alpha group in Montana before he went to med school. And I know you know Dick Schroeder.
Absolutely.
Because he is a huge college ministry, like father to many people, right? And those are just a few of like all of these conversations that have occurred, and God has opened up doors, and people from the health system have been coming to the church. Many people are asking questions, reaching out, encouraging me. Some pharmacy technicians that I worked with many, many years ago, they came and, Dave, we just had to see what it looked like for a pharmacy director to preach. We'd just never seen it before. We had to come and at least check it out.
Gotta watch this. I've listened to your lectures on pharmacy things, jargon. I don't know the jargon.
Oh, you're killing it though.
I'm killing the jargon.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, just Tylenol, bro.
That's all I need to know.
Tylenol and ibuprofen.
Dayquil.
Keep it 100,
Band-Aids.
man.
Is that pharmacy? No. Okay. No. You and Alissa, have always inspired me, but I think the leap of faith that you guys have taken in this season has been something that it's added fuel to mine and Taylor's fire too. I think just seeing you guys jump into this role and lead the way you are, I think I've loved being a part of a church that doesn't have like a mission statement right now because we're becoming, and I think that's been the thing that has been a beautiful thing about Northview is that it's not a church that like has it all. Here's the 10-year plan. It's like, we're just here. And, just, I feel like it's growing and adapting as people come in with their hurts and with their questions and with their doubts and with their concerns, and we rally around them as a community. So it's been really fun. If you were to look 20-year-old Dave in the face right now, what would be your advice to him? What would you say to him? This podcast is called Going Somewhere, summarizing kind of these young adult years. We're going somewhere. I don't know where it's all going to lead to, but what would you say to him right now?
Yeah. And I want to say this in a way that would not cause people to not know my heart, but I will say it and then I'll explain. What I would tell 20-year-old Dave, which would really be 2 years out of high school for most people, is I would say, Dave, humbly assume that the dreams that you have will come true. Like, humbly assume that the dreams in your heart will come true. And what I mean by that is, as a 20-year-old, I knew I was never going to be a professional athlete, but that wasn't my dream to be a professional athlete. I know, Stephen, you were on the track for professional athlete status.
I still am.
And I think you could still do it, Steve. I think we could make this happen. I think with a few Olympic
30
camps.
Isn't there like a movie about a 35-year-old rookie?
I think it's
me.
true. I think
it's
so.
Me.
So knowing that we'll work on that maybe after this podcast, we'll get working on that plan. I knew that I had a dream in my heart to one day. It's so funny. As a 20-year-old, I admired my Uncle Blair so much that I wanted to be a pharmacy director. I wanted to be a director of pharmacy. I thought that would be amazing opportunity. And then I also remember being about 20 years old, and I remember where I was in the worship center at the church we're sitting in as we record this podcast. And I remember just the little inkling in my heart that God laid that I totally ignored at the time. It's just, Dave, don't completely abandon the possibility that you could lead this church or a church like this someday. And what I mean by humbly assuming your dreams will come true is, if you really know who you are in Jesus and you know the skill set he's given you, if you're like me at age 20, you will be so convinced that the good things in your life will only be temporary, the gifts that you have will fade, or that you won't be good enough, that even though you develop your gifts and your leadership or whatever gift God's given you, you'll always assume that it would never be like what you think. You'll never get to the place you actually want to go. That you'll probably get part way there, or you might get, a fraction of the way there, but you'll never actually see the fruition of a dream that God's placed in your heart. And so I spent a lot of time between age 20 and 30 just assuming that I would never become what my dreams were, but I knew I should keep working at those characteristics, working on my character, working on those abilities. And I always just assumed that I would do all that work, but it would never happen. And I lived with kind of this defeated mindset. And then I remember when the opportunity to pursue the director of pharmacy job happened, I thought to myself, you are kidding. Like, there's no way this is actually happening. When meanwhile, I should have just trusted God that even though I didn't need to be prideful at any point and say, well, of course I got this in the bag. This is all going to happen. It's going to happen exactly as I thought. I did spend more time being insecure than I should have. I spent way more time feeling like I didn't have what it took than I should have, when I should have said, God, I'm just going to humbly assume that it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, I'm going to give the result to you. And so what I would say to a young adult at age 20 is, you kind of already know the gifts God's given you. I think if we really reflect, we know it's something for business and entrepreneurship. It's something for creative, flow. It's something for business, savvy. It's maybe I know a 20-year-old today in our church. He is a software engineer for a major company, and I think he could be a CEO for Apple. I don't know if he knows that, but he could. He has that kind of ability. He does right?
now.
He does now.
Listening.
He's listening to this podcast. You know who you are, and you're going to pursue it. And I think if you spend time between age 20 and 30, just humbly assuming that the dreams will come true, you won't live with that defeated mindset. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I actually started to understand, wow, what I've been dreaming and working towards could actually happen. And what happened, the problem with thinking that way, is when I moved into each of these two roles, I spent the first few weeks and even months kind of bewildered, like, there's no way this is happening. There's no way this is happening. Like, I can't believe that this is the role. Not that the role is like so amazing or important or anything like that, but you just don't ever believe it's going to happen. And so it's that bewilderment time where I think what you do really well, Stephen, in your life is you say, hey, listen, God's put a dream in my heart. I'm going to assume that it's going to express itself the way that I think. And if it doesn't, cool, like God's got me. But I'm definitely not going to live feeling like it won't go anywhere. And that's why I love the title of this podcast, because we're going somewhere. And I think when you have that podcast heart of going somewhere, you assume that where that place is good. Yeah. And it's not going to fall short of God's will for your life.
That's so good. I know one of the things that I've been living by is follow Jesus, not your dreams. I think there's a beautiful thing when the dreams and Jesus converge, and I think that's where I want to live my whole life, is in that place where the things that God's made me, like, knowing yourself is so awesome. And I think that when we were going through our transition, that was the big thing for me, was like, not that ministry had choked it out, but a lot of my life had been kind of fueling things towards this one beautiful ministry. And I loved that. Yeah. But then when that was no longer part of the picture, it was almost like an identity crisis of like, who's Stephen without Chi Alpha? And that was when I really felt like God kind of was doing things in my life that had been dormant for a while. And so it's been really fun to kind of enter a new season. And I think that's why I did this. I want more people to have that convergence of the things that are laid on our hearts, the things that we are made for, and then aligning them with Jesus and what he desires to do in this world through us and around us. But Dave, it's been so great to have you as the first inaugural guest on the Going Somewhere podcast. I think I had a blast.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast too, and we even got a little bit of Jones poop throwing.
Yeah,
to just
we
kind of mix it up.
That made it.
We slipped it in.
I loved the tie-in. It was the perfect.
Did you see how I brought it in?
I did. Just that whole scenario, it's like one of the worst things in parenting was when a child, because you have to disinfect all the toys in the bathtub. You have to bleach there's,
but not too much because you don't want to like hurt your child if they were taking
so
bath again.
It's a big ordeal, but then for him to take it next level and put it on that's just
yeah, man.
What a way to end the first episode.
And with that, I will say though, something that you said, Stephen, really resonated with me. Follow Jesus, not your dreams. I think kind of where that kind of premise lines up with kind of where my heart is right now is, if we follow Jesus, we can assume that the dreams in our heart are his and that we'll experience them. I think that's the beautiful thing about what you said, and really what I think we're all going through as young adults is, as I follow Jesus, it doesn't mean I give up on all my dreams. It means that whatever the dreams I have will align with what Jesus wants, and what I experience will be something that's life-giving me.
Yeah, for sure. And others. Which is the beautiful thing. Well, hey, love you. Appreciate you. And for those of you listening, come back next week for another episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, and join the conversation at goingsomewhere.podcast.